And you talk a little bit about the integration iceberg.
Correct. If you try to deliver customized right now, because everybody does the single line of code for each customers, I mean, that multiply it by hundreds of customers. If you implement two systems, if you've integrated, hundreds of them, that iceberg builds up. And then that's kind of what you live for through merger and acquisition, or any changes that you're trying to do, change your product line, that iceberg needs to move and be redone every time.
Well, hello everybody, and welcome to this episode of Small Talk Window, where the host and guest have a small window of time to dispense with the small talk as quickly as possible and settle into a meaningful conversation around the world of work. And my guest today is a very interesting fellow. We've had many conversations in the past. This is Jeff Tremblay, who is CTO, Chief Technology Officer, and also co-founder of the Cloud Connectors. Welcome, Jeff.
Thank you, Brent. Great being with you.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm really looking forward to today's conversation. If you would please just kind of maybe from a 50,000 foot view, maybe 30 seconds, give us your life story. Just kidding. But if you could just kind of fill in our listeners, our audience, on, what are you all about? What is the Cloud Connectors? And then we'll kind of launch into what we're going to talk about today.
For sure. My background is I've started in IT, and I believe I graduated in 2003, and I started working in integration right away. I was working at ExxonMobil initially in the oil industry, very structured world, and the integration were relatively easy in the sense that it's, EDI, we had standards for everything, exchanging information was fairly easy. And then I switched to the HR world in 2005. Joined Taleo, where I quickly became manager of integration, and then I learned about a very different world, which is the HR one, about where very little structured, few standards. Every software company has different data models, and there's when you're trying to exchange data, the biggest problem is that data problem, like right off the bat. So that's the history, and then we founded Cloud Connectors in 2015, and that's kind of been our goal since then. And initially, that we were just coming off of Oracle had done the acquisition, and Taleo has transformed itself from a talent acquisition to talent management system. So reorganized the data structure, and then with the acquisition, we lived through a few cycles of having to move customers from one data model and all the integrated customers from one to the other, and it was like years and millions of dollars of project every time. And our goal was like, how can we solve this data problem better and solve it at the root? So that's kind of the foundation of the Cloud Connectors and the problem we've been working with. So.
Yeah. And we've had many conversations over the past few years, Jeff, around this integration challenge. And it's interesting what you say about it because, we hear all the vendors in this space. They have a vision for the future of work. We keep hearing about it's a future where people data reigns supreme, the lifeblood of the employer of the future. They tell us data will imbue organizations and embrace and master it with a competitive edge and building resilient, attractive cultures and winning at the game of innovation and all that stuff. And they're not wrong at all. Because if you have that people data, right, it is a competitive advantage. If you can make sense of it, it sounds great, and it is great. But people data is kind of in chaos right now, isn't it?
I believe it is, yes. And I agree with everything you said. I do think there's a vision. I believe what people may be missing is what are all the barriers of this, and ultimately it is a data problem. And I do believe integration is a contributing factor to data chaos, because how the industry tries to solve this is you're an industry where every system has different data model, they the same concepts are implemented differently, right? Just think about the skills. Skills is like a bit all over the place. So when you try to integrate, you have different data structure. Plus, you need to embrace the fact, especially in the enterprise, that not every enterprise is implemented the same way. Even if you're using the same system, they're going to be configured differently. And first thing that I learned, I guess, in my master's degree, did system analyst course. The first thing they try to teach you is don't try to fit the business processes into your system. Is the system should accommodate the business processes, because the secret sauce and the DNA of an organization can be part of those business processes. So not everybody can fill into the same exact thing, right? So I guess we need to, what's the problem from my perspective is there is, different organization, different data model with different data requirements, but the industry, instead of embracing it, is trying to solving it right now with out of the box / like good enough integration. That's kind of what, there's a big push out that, and everybody's trying to solve it by saying, well, we'll deliver those, let's try to accommodate the most commonly used fields between those systems and highly distribute those. But that's a pretty massive contributing factor, because then if you integrate only part of the data, how can you rely on it afterwards, especially? So there's, enterprise are using more and more and more system across, and they're poorly integration. They don't integrate all the data properly, and they don't accommodate. They're trying to just solve half of it. And then how can you rely on this data, basically?
Right, and you end up with, you're absolutely correct, and I think this is a really important point that I was really looking forward to this episode, to really kind of getting the message out there, because like you say, every single organization's technology stack is unique, and there are certainly obviously common denominators across everywhere,
For
right?
sure.
Right?
Yeah.
But if you're solving for the common denominators, you're only going to get a certain distance to wherever it is you're going, you're trying to get. So here's an example for our audience to kind of set the stage a little bit here. Is we hear about AI. We hear a lot about AI. It's going to help us understand our people, and all this kind. We hear a lot about skills ontologies, AI powered self-evolving skills ontologies, this kind of stuff, right? Where it's the data, you constantly updating on sort of an ontology of what the skills are in your organization and what you need skills for, and all this kind of stuff. So let's talk about AI for a second. Also, in terms of large language models, we hear a lot about LLMs for short, and how they're going to help us in HCM. But you can't even run an LLM up against a company's people data if that technology stack isn't properly integrated, right? You're not. It's that old term, ironically applied to AI, is garbage in, garbage out, right? So
Correct.
This is a perfect example, right?
No, totally agree, because AI learns from what you feed it, basically. So it's hard to make it learn from poorly integrated system and like one system. I do think there's a lot of promise with AI. It can help, but will it?
This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. Psst, healthcare pros, word's out, and it's too good to keep quiet. Look, LinkedIn is revolutionizing job hunting, making it possible to search by specialty, shift preference, and salary. Endless scrolling is out. Whether it's a mental health therapist or dental hygienist, finding the perfect role is faster and easier than ever. Head to linkedin.com/healthcare and start your search today.
Tonight on NBC, Jimmy Fallon and Bozoma St. John host the highly anticipated new competition show.
I hired 10 creatives from all walks of life. They will be battling it out to see who can impress the world's biggest brands.
This is a huge opportunity.
This is the battle for the next big idea.
This is not play.
We're spending millions of dollars.
I'm so excited to embark on this adventure with all of you.
May the best idea win!
On Brand with Jimmy Fallon, series premiere tonight on NBC.
Solve everything without solving the integration problems? I don't think so. I think it should. We need to solve that, and then it will complement and help after the fact, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. So just to bring this into something visceral, I think that our audience is really going to kind of that I think that the audience, that the folks out there in the HCM market space are really going to kind of, glom onto, I think, is, what we're really talking about is getting to the future of work. When we hear about this people data and how it's going to transform, revolutionize the world of work, and we're talking about that vision of getting to the future of work. And integrations, what I'm hearing from you is that integration can be a big obstacle to that. It's a lot more of an obstacle than we think it is. And so, what's if we were to look at this chaos and all of that, how can we get this right and get to the future of work where we've all been promised?
What we're working on at the Cloud Connectors is our problem is how do we mass distribute customizable integration? That's been our focus. How do we mass distribute it? And then the biggest hurdle and why everybody right now tries to deliver out of the box integration is because if you change the data requirements right now, what the impact is on an integration level, it means integration code, which keeps driving the cost up of integrated customers. So if everybody has its single line of code, if they want to have what they need, it keeps driving the cost up, and then there's a lot of fallback on let's distribute good enough, right? So that's kind of how the model has been doing. What we're trying to solve, and what we've solved, is we created our integration language where we can write a data requirement and generate the code, so that you don't need to create code for each customers. If you're trying to integrate two systems, we can change the specification of those integration and yet generate the code on our iPaaS. So that's problem one. Now, in order to complete the life cycle or the offering, now we're working on distribution, which there was a lot of good with distributing, out of the box integration. There was a lot of efforts in the distribution of those. So we want to bring those nice concepts with like portal, basically where a customer can sign in, do SSO, but then being able to enable the integration, change the actual data requirement, and have the code generated. We believe that's the source. So to us, how we think we can solve it is let's enable mass distribution of integration that you can modify in very simple terms, to make sure that we don't deliver good enough, but we deliver what's needed in the field, especially for enterprise.
Yeah, absolutely. It's this situation where you have an integration that's flexible and can evolve with the rest of the system. Yeah, as opposed to sort of a fixed, inflexible API. And you talk a little bit about the integration iceberg too. There's a little bit around that, right? That's because integration is a little bit. There's a lot more to it, and we don't have to get into it, but just too much. But there's a lot more to that integration than meets the eye that's needed.
Correct, and the iceberg is what we call is if you try to deliver customized right now, because everybody does the single line of code for each customers, I mean, that multiply it by hundreds of customers. If you implement two systems, if you've integrated, hundreds of them, that iceberg builds up. And that's kind of what you live through merger and acquisition, or any changes that you're trying to do, change your product line, that iceberg needs to move and be redone every time, right? So that keeps adding to the cost, and that's why it's contributing to everybody's kind of focusing on, well, okay, let's eliminate that iceberg problem by everybody going through the same pipe with the same data requirement, and let's ignore that type of thing. So that's what we describe as the iceberg.
Yeah, absolutely. This is really fascinating stuff because we're talking about newfound efficiencies. We're talking about major cost savings over time, and just like an iceberg, it kind of accumulates more ice as it floats out there in the ocean, right? Your integration issues can accumulate more issues, can become more and more legion as you build out your tech stack. And it's really something to keep an eye on. And if you want to be poised as an organization to get to this future of work that we keep hearing about and is a very worthy goal and is within reach if we get things right, then just to put a fine point on it, you need to be paying attention to this integration issue and approaching it, assuming that you have a unique situation that needs a tailored approach.
100% agree.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you, Jeff, so much for appearing on this episode of Small Talk Window. It's been a real pleasure. This is a really important topic.
Thanks for inviting me. Always nice chatting with you.